How did you think it was compared to the UFC?
I've been to both of them, and the thing that I liked about this that I thought was a different take was they had a jiu-jitsu, then they have the kickboxing by itself, and then they had the MMA. So you had a variety of all combat sports that connect to one another. So I thought that was really, really good. You could see the progression. If you was just a jiu-jitsu guy, you got something. If you was more of a striking guy, you got something. If you were an MMA guy, wanted to see it all, you got something. So I thought it was really good.
I have a question because I haven't seen like a UFC fight in quite a long time. It seemed like those fights were really fast. And for somebody like me who doesn't have a long attention span, like I really enjoyed that it was like a very quick timeline. Is it the same thing in the UFC or is it not like that?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's pretty much the same amount of rounds, same, I think one fight went to the whole distance, but the rest of them were knockouts. So it's pretty good. You're going to get a variety because those guys are high level. So you're going to get a variety of different guys, different skill sets.
What do you think about the talent? Do you think the talent is equal, better, or worse than either?
They got some good talent over there, man. They have some really good talent. Definitely from the striking standpoint, I think their talent is amazing. I would love to see a matchup between some of their guys and some of the UFC guys.
And some of the people on this call.
Yes. So yeah, definitely. I would like to see. I think it's going to be, if they establish themselves in America, it's going to definitely give some serious competition to the UFC. I believe so.
Like WWF and WWE kind of.
Yeah. I mean, they got Mighty Mouse on there. He's amazing. So that's my favorite guy personally. So yeah, I think they definitely can give them a run for the money.
If they get Richie Rich, they'll really be good. Oh, I guess that's the owners.
Yeah, that's gonna, the egos and the pride with that. So
yeah. Well, amazing. Welcome, everybody. Mr. Tention, I think you and I first got to meet probably like 5 or 6 years ago now out on Long Island.
Really?
I think so. Like we would go to those meetings. Yeah.
Wow. Well, good seeing you again on this podcast.
Amazing. Anyway, could you take a second for anybody that's watching and doesn't know you to introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, your school, what you're working on now, all that good stuff?
So my name is Tention. I live in New York City. I have been training for about 37 years. I used to compete a lot in tournament sparring. Was extremely successful in that competition field. Few world titles, been all over the world fighting from Russia to Africa, Germany, Switzerland, just fighting for many years. Then I opened my school, made some high-level competitors. And now, right now, as well as running my school, I'm one of the coaches on the Relentless team with Adam and Kelly and John and Frank and Bryce, Travis and Chris Casamassa. So dealing with school owners and helping them with their belt requirements, that's my part, what happens on the mat. So, it's been a good life for me.
Yeah, amazing. And one of my favorite things, I've gotten to visit your school. You weren't there. You were like at some like tournament or I don't know, you were somewhere else. But anytime when I was there, whenever I see you post videos, I think what's most impressive, I don't know how many fighters you produce out of there or whatever, but all of your students seem amazing. I mean, you're like watching a class of 30 kids just crush it. And that is certainly an anomaly, I think, at most martial arts schools.
Yeah, I think I have a formula for it. I think sometimes people, the time and the culture that it takes to create that, I think sometimes people don't realize what goes into that, right? And I think just trial and error of making mistakes and knowing that I wanted to create a school that I would join myself, right? That was important to me. And so I think we have a pretty good idea of what we want to do or how the systems that we use to get it to that point. But I thank you for the compliment. And we just getting started. We really are.
I mean, well, this is a perfect call for you to be on because as we were messaging, as we always do before this Tuesday, we were going over, what topics we're going to talk about. And Mr. Sell over there, who likes numbers and computers, he did a super deep dive
Wait,
I don't know. It seems like that's your thing. That's your jam.
I don't like numbers and I tolerate computers.
Got it,
Okay.
got it. But the cool thing is you're the only one out of here with so much data because, you and Spark work with so many schools. So, I mean, this is a perfect topic for Mr. Tention to be on and for us to, chat about for the next 30 odd minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So I would like to know what you found in your deep dive you did.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, we used to go to these seminars from Educational Funding Company. I don't know if you guys remember those guys or not. Way back when. Yeah.
I was on
EFC.
the phone with them this morning.
Okay. So I was seriously like 8 years old going to their seminars that they had. And it was really, as a 7-year-old to 19-year-old, it sure was a wealth of knowledge. And I loved every second of it. But I remember back then we talked so much about retention. I mean, it was it seemed to me like all they talked about was, retention and that kind of stuff. And so a few months ago, I started, looking at data inside of Spark anonymously. I can just look at numbers and stuff and pull, do little queries in the database and pull back different things. And what I found is that it's still a problem. I mean, this is 30 years later and it's the same damn problem, is retention. And it seems like over the last few years, or maybe a little longer, it's all turned to digital marketing and how many people you can enroll. And people are doing 20 and 30 and 40 new members a month. And, that's what got me, excited about looking at retention numbers. Cause I'm like, man, this guy must have 900 students in his school if he's enrolling 30, 40, members per month. And, you look at the retention, it's awful. And one of the things and so I told you I didn't like numbers and that kind of stuff, and I tolerate it. I'm more of an emotional guy, right? So in my mind, it's like, martial arts schools and instructors, at least I'm speaking for myself, and I'm probably for you guys too, is like, I get jazzed the most when I watch a student go from point A to point Z, and I watch that entire journey. You know what I mean? Like, I've had so many students that came in, they couldn't look you in the eyes. And then they, 5 years, 6 years later, they become black belts and they're like rock stars, right? Like a total transformation. But it takes time to do that stuff. So, if we're so focused on how many more people we can enroll just so that we can replace all the people that are walking out the back door, I think it's a real disservice to the people that need us the most, right? I mean, our job as instructors is to teach people. And I think teaching people long-term, people get the most benefit out of it. You know what I mean? I also looked at, and it's the same as 30 years ago when I was in those EFC seminars, I always looked at, cohorts. I don't even like that word, but cohorts. And, back then they always said, the number one place people quit is like at the beginning, first 90 days. It's the same. It's the same today. Like there's more white belts or people that are whatever the next belt is that quit than any other cohort that there is. And when I see more, I'm not saying 50% more, I'm saying 60, 70% of all quits are in that first 90 days or so, average around the schools that I look at. I just think that's a real disservice. And I think we should do something about that, right? Like one of the things that I think that we should do about it is I think every school is different. So what is different, in my school than Jadi's school or your schools, it might be a different combination of things, right? But I think each school should actually take the time, me going on 3 months now, like diving into, why do people quit churches? Why do people quit soccer? I mean, I went deep into why do people quit, right? And I think in each school, it's probably a little different. The number one thing that they say out there is because it's no fun anymore, but I don't know if that's really the answer, right? It's like, I think that it wasn't fun after a while because something happened, and I call it paper cuts, like each individual paper cut that happens in the school, eventually they wake up and they just don't want to be there anymore. And they say that it's no more fun, right? But anyways, I find it interesting that we're still dealing with the same problem 30 years later from when I was a kid. And I think that I don't know that we spend enough time as instructors on, why are people quitting? Even in Spark, okay? People quit in Spark. And our retention is like 99%. Like it's legitimate weird, 99% retention. And we're proud of that number. Like we want someone for life. When they join Spark, we want them for life. So we've created so many things at the very beginning because we know also in software, the first 90 days is the most crucial, right? And I think we need to do that same thing in our schools, is like what's going on in those first 90 days that are causing people to drop out like flies. And I think if we solve that issue in our schools, then we would have people, I mean, our retention probably would get cut in half. So, as I look at retention percentage, I saw people had 11% retention or churn rate, I should say, 11% churn rate, 12% churn rate. Most of them were at 7 or 8%. And again, I don't know names. I didn't look at schools and who the instructors were or anything like that. I just looked at raw numbers. And I think that that's something that people should look at and maybe spend, a good few months trying to determine why and what they can do to patch those holes.
So I'm sure everybody has a lot to say on this, but I think what people don't realize is at 8%, you're losing almost 100% of your school every single year.
Yeah.
Like, 8% seems like, it's not 10%, but you're losing 100% of your students. If it's 11 or 12%, you're using 150% of your students. That's a
and also
number.
It is mind-boggling. And if you got 10% churn rate in your school, okay, that's a term we use in software, churn, but it's basically the opposite of retention, okay? If you just got it down to 5%, you could enroll half as many people as you do now. And if you continue to enroll the amount of people that you are now, then that means you're in a positive growth, right? But still, I mean, like I said, I hate numbers. I think on the opposite side, it's like, that's, a full school's worth of people you could have helped, Michael, right? That's a full school's worth of people that you could have made a difference in their life. And so I think, one of the conversations we need to have with our staff is, getting them to recognize specific examples in our schools that we improve their lives, right? Like we saw someone go from here to there. And then really getting the staff to buy in that, hey, we got to do whatever it takes to keep people training long term, because long term is where all the joy and the benefits and the change happens.
Yeah, for sure. And we're all products of that. I'm sure we all wanted to quit our karate school at some point. Mr. Brenner, I see you raising your hands. I'm very unlike you.
That's true. So I was just thinking, like, if you ask any karate school owner, they always say the same thing. Like, listen, I just need more people at the front door, because when they come to my school, nobody quits. Like, once they're in, like, and they always say the same thing. And I'm like, and then, of course, if you look at any stats, that's obviously not the case. So I think the first step, just like in any other issue, is admitting that you have a problem. So I think across the industry, everybody looks and goes, even with our schools, we're like super focused on retention. So like for us, like the high is probably 5 or 6%, and then the low is probably like 2.5 to 3 would be like our best schools. And we're still talking about like you're losing half of school, you're losing half your school every year. Like we have got to figure this out. I think we're getting better and better. But I think the first thing to do is like recognize like it's not what you think it is. And for most of us, it hurts our egos too much, right? Like it's super exciting when you get a new student, right? You have that burst of energy. But then losing a student, or I shouldn't say that. I think somebody said once, like keeping a student, there's no burst of energy when you keep one, because you don't realize like there's no like, you don't realize it. You lose it, of course it hurts. So did you do any, when you were looking at, I do the same thing, like outside the industry, churches, soccer, what's got the best retention? What did you discover in those things?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the articles I read were more articles like, my child wants to quit soccer, what do I do? And, what's interesting is that most of the videos were like, well, let him quit.
That's the culture that, I'm sorry, but I don't mean to cut you off.
No, please. But I mean, that's, and I was so surprised by that because I think there's statistics in soccer that by the time, 80% of kids quit soccer by the time they're 13 years old. And I think it's like 90% by the time they're 15 years old, right? And so a lot of those kids probably don't pick up much. I mean, they probably don't do a whole lot more after that. I'm sure there's a subset of that, but it's like, that's a crazy, thing to do is to, not try to talk your kids into, keep doing something that's really benefiting them. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is in my mind. I mean, if we can talk about my opinion on how we keep people more, I think it boils down to not a whole lot of tactics, but more two things. Number one is making, some more solid connections. Everybody wants to be involved in a tribe. I look back when I was a kid, and half of the people that were training in the black belt ranks are still around today doing martial arts. There was that core of people that hung out together, and we were connected with the instructors, et cetera. And I think the other side is, especially the first 90 days, there's got to be a plan, a system in place of keeping them, moving down the right path. And anyways, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that was great, Mr. Tention. I'm sure you have a lot to say on this.
Oh no, I'm in total agreement with him. I also believe, I don't think it's any one particular reason. But I also believe, as I said before, and what we can control is that there are too many symbols and not enough substance in martial arts schools, right? And one of the things that we do is we create belt requirements to keep them entertained instead of making a quality product. And we create the requirements to say, I don't want you to get bored, but I'm not really worrying about you getting better. And I think that the more educated the consumer becomes, because we get a lot of educated parents now, they get to watch boxing, they get to watch UFC, social media, you can see it all over the place. They know what they want and they know what they don't want, right? And I think that when we walk into our schools, it is our job to empower them, and not just with the life skill. I always say this, I am for life skills, because I think that if you create a child that's capable of violence, then he or she should have a moral compass. But if you're just creating, hey, little Johnny can raise his hand, he can talk a little louder, he feels good about himself, then he doesn't need to go to your school or my school, he can go to church. He can join the Boy Scouts, he can join the Girl Scouts. The difference between why they come to our karate school is because they're learning all of those things about life skills, respect, discipline, character development, perseverance, while learning to be capable of violence. That's the difference. And we have removed that out the way and say, all you got to do is raise your hand. Now look at little Johnny, he can raise his hands a little bit better. He's doing that in a martial arts school, right? If that's like, consider this, gentlemen, consider going to a gymnastics school where we can learn all those life skills, and the last thing that we could do is learn how to flip. That's crazy. They're in your martial arts school. They should learn to be capable of violence. And if you take a ballerina who's been training for 1 year and take one of these kids that have been in the majority of these martial arts schools and you put them together in 1 year, you wouldn't know who's who. We have to fix that as an industry. We have to fix that. And I think that's another problem, is that we do not, when we're creating our curriculum, we do not consider all the factors of what it takes to become good. If I may, can I get another 2 minutes?
You can have all the minutes there. I'm in for the show.
So let's consider this, because I said this in Vegas. Let's consider this. How long is our general class? 45 minutes? 40 minutes? Let's say 45 minutes, just general, right? How many times does a child normally come to class? Twice a week. That is 90 minutes a week, which is 6 hours a month. That 6 hours a month is shared amongst 25 to 50 kids per class, depending on how successful your school is. Now that they come twice a week, 6 hours a month, then we cram them with, you gotta learn all these forms. You gotta learn all this self-defense. You gotta learn to roll, learn to flip, learn to do the bow, learn to do the comma, learn to do this. And then we cram in information. The kid really doesn't get that good. And then we test the child on this how long is every one cycle? Every what?
3 months.
Okay, 3 months. We do not have 3 months. We say we have 3 months. You know what we have? We have 18 hours. If that child comes to your school twice a week, that's 90 minutes a week, 4 weeks in a month, that's 6 hours. That's 6 hours times 3 months, that is 18 hours. When you look at the time you have and you compare it to your curriculum, the math is not mathing. We give them too much. We don't make them good at the simple things. We overwhelm them. Think, a child is in your school for 6 hours a month. A child goes to class 35. If you think about a child going to school from 9, let's say 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, that is 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. That is 30 hours. That child spends more time in a week in class than he does in 6 months in your school. Meanwhile, we cramming all this information in a child. And I think that also hurts us and hurts our retention as well, is that we're producing terrible quality, we're justifying it with life skills, and we're not developing students who are capable of defending themselves, and we're lying to them going, all that matters is that we raise your hand really good. You might as well put them in Boy Scouts. You might as well put them in the Girl Scouts. You might as well send them to church with belts. And I think that's also has to be addressed in order for also our retention to also improve. What happens on your floor?
100%. I didn't know they had belts in church.
Man, listen, I didn't know they had belts for flipping.
Amen. Testify. That, I mean, everything you're saying is, we believe. And yeah, I've heard you talk about it before, and it's definitely influenced, the way we think about things. So connection and progress is always our North Star, right? Like the person seeing connection. And think about have you guys all taught, I assume everybody's taught private lessons, not just like to help somebody, but like over a long period of time. Private lessons never quit. Like you have these people, we have private lessons that have been here for decades. And why do they not quit? Because you have a real connection to them. You're constantly making them really better. Like you're hovered over them the entire time.
Yes.
You know their parents. You know their brothers and sisters. They walk in. You have a conversation. So. I always think like that. Not I think. I know that needs to be part of You're not teaching a class. You're teaching an individual, and they have to have that feeling of like they know that you were. They know that that they were there and they got better during that class. So. You want to make it like it's a group class, but like a private lesson experience. And that's really and that is the holy grail. I mean, eventually when somebody figures out how to get down to 1 or 2% retention, they're the ones that are going to have, 500 schools or whatever, because it's so much easier instead of all this like chasing Google AdWords and, fancy websites. If nobody's quitting because they are real, and you go back to church, when you look at those mega churches, it's, my sister ran the 10th largest church, she ran the social media for the 10th largest church in the country. And, I would go to, I'm Jewish, but I would go to, like
church.
Yeah, I would go to church. Whenever I visit, I'd go, and there'd be like thousands of people, but they were all in like small little tiny groups, and people were in charge of the groups, and they taught them how to run their groups, and everybody had like a purpose and everything. And you'd go to church, there was no like pressure for testing. There was only like, how can we serve you? How can you make the public better? And they would always talk about all the great works they were doing. And you'd have thousands and thousands and thousands of people showing up every Sunday. The place was bonkers. I mean, it was as fancy as like a Ritz-Carlton. And it had, you could say, oh, well, they're wasting all this money. They're obviously not, because more people are going there than anything anywhere else. So it's got to be that personal connection. And it's hard to do that. Some people like want to stand up there and like almost like a preach situation. And I know we said church is good, but preaching the idea that they're just preaching to the crowd, not to the individual. But every person's got to feel like you're personally talking to them. Mm-hmm. And they got to leave knowing that, like, everything about this person. And if you do, they're not going to quit. Like, they're going to stick with it. So how do we systematize that for more schools? The dynamic instructors, I'm sure, Mr. Tention, all your students, I'm sure you joke with their parents, you're truthful with them.
All the time.
Right. No, and you told like awesome stories where you're yelling at parents about doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and you're doing it out of love because you love that kid and you know the right thing to do. How do we help other school owners do the right thing? Because it's one for all for one. Also, like every time somebody has a bad experience in a karate school, it's bad for everybody.
Absolutely.
It's not like telling their cousin like, well, my school sucked, but you might have a really good school near you.
Yeah.
I think it's like karate's stupid.
Well, I personally think what you hit a great point when you talk about make it personal. The thing now is that I don't even have to go to your karate. When I say your, meaning us, I don't have to go to your karate school to learn anything technically. I can go watch a YouTube video. I can watch an Instagram reel. But what you can't get over the video is the camaraderie. You can't get the friendships, the laugh, the jokes, the good times, the stories. So that's ultimately the thing that brings in, just like church. I could look at the minister on a screen, right? So it's the feeling that we get. But I also believe, as you just said, is that we are invested in your progress as well. And then the question is then, what is progress, right? And every school has to determine what is progress. I know for me, just personally, I want an environment where we can sweat, laugh, have a good time, grow as people, grow as individuals, while learning to be capable of violence, right? I want to be very clear about that. And I don't say that in a negative manner, meaning that if you're in my school long enough, you should know what it is to sidestep, punch, draw, pull, draw, flare, pump, kick, punch, block, laugh, cry, smile, high five. It should be all of that. But we have gotten away from anything that makes anybody want to run, challenge them, make them want to, maybe feel uncomfortable at times. But we are the group that would say perseverance. We are the group that would say integrity, hard work, mental toughness. And we will run our classes total opposite of all of that. And I think it has to be a direct connection between your life skills and your mat. And I think that we teach the mat chat for 2 minutes, and then we do the class when the whole class is the mat chat. If you're talking about perseverance, they should be sweating in your karate school. If you're talking about mental toughness, they should have a significant amount of push-ups and sit-ups at certain ranks to challenge their bodies. We have gotten away from all of that, but we have left the symbols there to go, you're doing great, Johnny, perseverance. And we have to get back to doing what we said we was going to do in our life skills. And I think there's a total separation of the skill set and the life skills that we all claim to teach. And I think it should be all connected and not separated.
Do you think, I think parents are changing now. Like, I think we went through in the 1970s with like Dr. Spock, who said, if you say anything negative to a child, it'll break their self-esteem and that will destroy them. And I think it went into, the pendulum swung so far, like, better not say anything bad, to where now things are changing. I think parents do want more discipline. They want more reality. Yes. I do think, do you think it has to be, like, as we were talking, I was thinking like, maybe it's the instructors have to be retrained how to say, hey, you know what feels really good? Failing your test, getting better, and then coming back and crushing it. Not passing a test, that's an empty victory. That doesn't feel really good. That's like a crap good feel. But really, like where you're telling them how failing is to their benefit. It feels really good that you can take a punch to the face and get back up and keep fighting. That's what feels really, really good. Like if you taught them how to have that failure moment, how to, like you're saying, like perseverance, it's on the mat. Well, yeah, like your stomach's killing you or your arms are quivering, but you're doing it, you're pushing anyway. Your tears are pushing you back up.
Yes.
That's what feels really good, not a high five.
I think all of it has its place, because I give a high five too, right? But it's warranted. Or I try to motivate you, like, listen, come on, I know you can do better. But I also think that when that parent walks to your door, your coach determines the conversation that you're going to have with them. So I have those conversations from the door. Listen, everything is earned in here. If he or she does what I'm asking them to do, and I give them the belt requirements, I'm going, this is where we should be at in 3 months. If it's not, and it takes more time, it takes more time. And the thing that I tell them, rank is never asked for, nor is it denied. So if I'm telling you that little Mikey's ready, this is not a debate. This is a dictatorship that you have volunteered for. I want you to understand that as you go forward in this program. I'm very clear, because this is the thing. I don't want everybody. I just want the 300 that want to be in my school who want to pay me the rate that I'm asking for. I don't have enough room for everybody in the Bronx, and I don't want my school for everybody. It's for those people who align with the culture of what I'm asking for, which allows me to teach the way I teach and say what I say. But if I open my door for everybody, then I got to play that game of, all right, little Mikey, whatever you say. I got to be at the mercy of a 9-year-old's emotions. And that's not what I'm about to do.
So, Mr. Stout, have you looked at are there any schools that are the outliers where you're looking at it and they have 2% retention?
Yep.
There
sure is.
Have you thought about going to them and asking them to, if it's just like they're so charismatic, it's hard to duplicate that, although we could all try, I guess, but looking for the clues of what they're doing, or ask them directly, like, hey, you have 2% retention, let's make a report.
Yeah, 100%.
Tool for you guys.
Yeah, I thought that'd be a great idea. Find the top 5 people that are really just crushing it, and then ask them to let's chat about it, see if we can help the other people. But I've also, before I do that, I also kind of wanted to, just kind of think it through, like really get deep and involved in there. And I love the 2 things you said. It's exactly what I what I came up with: connection and progress. And it goes into what you said, Johnny, too. It's like when they feel like they're awesome, when they have true confidence, not the bullshit confidence that we push on them, but the real confidence,
Yes, sir.
they're going to want to stick around because they feel themselves getting that progress. They feel themselves getting more confident, the real kind of confidence. And I also think that the connection is super important, especially the first 90 days, right? I mean, like super connected the first 90 days. I don't teach anymore, but I do own a jiu-jitsu school that I don't know any jiu-jitsu, but I think it's funny. But I remember what we did way back when was that first, 90 days, we knew exactly when they were coming to class every single time. Like it was set and they got reminders, right? We almost treated it like it was an appointment, like you get their reminders and all that stuff. And we do the same thing in Spark. Like I'm Jotty, you jumped on Spark a while back and you probably got those text messages that said, hey, we're meeting tomorrow to train you on your software. And then our team is making sure you're showing up to that, because we found out that if we put them down this path and we made sure it held them accountable, they'd keep showing up. And once we got them past the 90 days, we're going to keep them for a really long time. Same thing with students, right? I mean, I think we really need to put them down this path and spend a lot of time there, because I think that's really, hate to say this, but low hanging fruit. If you solve that first problem, 50% of your retention problem has gone out the window, right?
Michael, I mean, we do that now. I mean, they have to schedule their classes. They get a text that they missed their classes. They get a text that they're not scheduled for a class. So I'm not sure if all our schools are following it 100%, but I'm guessing that the school that Michael's main school does it at 97 or 99%. Would that be accurate?
Good. They're pretty good. Yeah. So, Mr. Tention, if you were solving this from a curriculum issue, because I think it would be interesting for a lot of people watching on here, what's your ideal curriculum, or what do you do in your school the first 90 days?
Well, I do a rotating curriculum, and I look at each program as a grade instead of a report card. So when I'm dealing with, for example, if I have 4 belts in that first beginner cycle with 3 months apart from each other, every time they get a new belt, I don't look at it as the requirements change. It's just the approach changes. What I found from sparring, fighting, competing is that in order for you to get really good at anything, you got to do it over and over and over and over again. But this is what we do. For example, jab, cross, front kick. I'm just throwing stuff out there. Is yellow belt, and then orange belt. Even though they're in the same class, now it's side kick, hook kick, round kick. And then in advanced yellow belt, a spinning back kick. They don't get good at that. They only have 90 minutes with you a week. They have to share that 90 minutes with 50 other kids. How good are they really getting? How many reps are they getting? Right? We put them on the Wave Masters. We put them in the line. They never know how to hold pads with each other. We can't have 25 pad holders for 25 kids. So we put them on the Wave Master. We line them up and we just say, hey, you're fending for yourself. And the athletes, whoever the athletes are, we take them to the tournaments. Those are the guys. But you don't bring up little Johnny who has 2 left feet, who's not really good. The requirements do not groom them. The requirements, we don't have the requirements to create them, to give them progression, to make them better. And that's the problem. So I think for me, I'm very simple. I'm a jab, cross, block your face, get back to your feet, back fall. I deal with 1 kick for my whole first year. And I go over it 20,000 different ways. I'm like a restaurant. I'm gonna serve you chicken. I'm gonna barbecue it, fry it, grill it, make it Cajun, bake it, stew it. And it's the same. And that's what I'm looking for in the beginner program. So I would suggest, just my suggestion is that every instructor should, or school or program or affiliation should have an idea of what they want their beginners to look like and create a program that supports that skill set, opposed to, I'm going to give them a new kick this belt because they may get bored, even though they're going to suck at it. I'm not doing that, right? So my curriculum is systematically prepared for a certain outcome. And that's why I can show you a group of yellow belts that everyone who's ever been to my school, always. And I get school owners all the time. They'll watch the class and go, Jody, this is crazy. And I just make sure I drill the skill set that I'm looking for. But I make sure as an instructor, we are super creative and hiding different things that we want for them, because they will get bored sometimes. So I want to be creative in how I hide it, but I don't deviate from the skill set that I'm looking for.
It'll be easier to write curriculum from now on, Michael. Just write the word front kick on a piece of paper.
No, see what you can't, right?
We're good for the year.
You gotta, like, this is the thing that I'm telling the school owners. Whatever you write, whatever you put on that paper, you have to have the systems in your requirements to back that up, right? So, for example, you got a lot of people now, they doing boxing drills. That's wonderful with point fighting gear on. What are we talking about here? Like, this is like, you have to embrace the thing that you're teaching, right? You got, if you're gonna teach a low kick, then we better spar with low kicks, but we won't do that. We'll do the symbol thing. Look, we do boxing here. Do your kids ever box with each other? No. We do some Muay Thai hand through a knee. Do your kids ever throw knees at each other? No. So I'm not saying don't teach those things, but how good can they get if they never in an environment that allows them to develop doing those things, or is it just only good for the belt test? And that's why I say there's a huge disconnect to what happens on the mat and what happens with a life skill and what we say we really teach, or what these kids are gonna develop after a year with us, 2 years with us. You wouldn't see this no place else. Could you imagine going to a cooking school and after a year, all you can make is toast? You got kids that have been in, listen, I get children that come to my school from other schools all the time to sign up. One in particular recently was a black belt. And I told the lady, I said, well, let him try the class out. He tried the class out. You would have never thought that this kid trained more than 6 months. Never. But why does he wear this black belt? Why? And I would have never thought that. And I asked myself, what are we doing as an industry? You couldn't tell me that if you was a gymnast for 4 years, you couldn't freaking flip. You couldn't tell me if you boxed for 4 years, I wouldn't see a good jab in the turn. But you could do martial arts for 3, 4, 5 years and look like you've never done it before. How does this happen?
I agree with everything that you're saying. Do you guys know Canes, like the chicken finger people?
No, I don't know who that is.
I think it's called Canes. Anyway, it's like chicken fingers. And I watched a documentary or an interview with the owner. And one interesting thing is he owns them all, which is, most fast food is franchises, so you have individual owners. So owning them all is obviously a phenomenal, business way to do it. But one of his like secrets is it's super basic. Like he sells like chicken fingers, Texas toast, coleslaw, and like one other thing. And he said over the last like 30 years, people always say, you got to start selling salads. Oh no, you got to have this other kind of, grilled chicken. And he said like he would always kind of like almost do it, like, oh, maybe they're right, because the world's changing. But then he'd be like, no, this is what we're really good at, and this is what we're going to stick to. And if you look at his menu, you would think, oh, this can never work out. But the reality is, it's like super simple and basic, and he's worth like so many billions of dollars because it's so basic. And I think you're 100% right that it has to be simple and done well. And that's, like I always look at like, we talk about some of the same stuff, of course, inspired by you, I think a few years ago. Our students are the product. Like if you imagine, like I always talk about like at a car coming off the assembly line, like, oh, the paint looks great. Well, the tires fell off. Well, don't worry about it. You can't keep all the tires on all the time.
Yes.
Like, that wouldn't work. And we're the only industry, I forget where I just heard this, maybe it was from Adam's podcast or something, or maybe somewhere else. But like, we're like one of the only industries that like somehow being successful is also equal to not being that good. Like you wouldn't go again to a car company and say like, Toyota has the best cars and they're also the poorest one. But that's somehow in karate, that's a thing. Like, oh, you have no students, you must be the best. Like that's like ludicrous. Like we have to if you have the best students, you should have the most students, not the opposite of that. And not because you're funneling away everybody. That's what they think is happening. You should be the best, like you need to be producing the best product. Everybody wants, like, you're not like tricking people. And like you said earlier, like people are educated. People aren't really stupid. So they have to have a good product, which means they have to be able to kick and punch in general. And of course, so our North Star is martial arts athlete, right? They can kick and punch. And they have basically good manners, they have basic good life skills, like.
Yeah, they're good people, absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. That's for us. That's it. It's food. And then all we care about is that. Like, that's it.
I would hope that most martial arts school would take that approach. But the thing is this too, right? This industry has shown us that you could be the worst and still have the most students. Like I've never seen this in any other place. I'll give you an example. I don't want to say any names. I was at an event in Vegas and they was given instructor of the year. And the person that won the instructor of the year, I was like, I don't care if they have 600 students. It is horrific in that place. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, what is the criteria that we are basing this on? Your dojo is your restaurant. Your curriculum is your menu. Just because you got beautiful waiters, a lovely valet, the ambiance is nice, the light is nice, the chairs are nice, the silverware is beautiful, and then they serve you a Big Mac. That's what we have. We have beautiful schools with beautiful mats, and it's pretty, and the lighting is right, and we have the spark systems in there, and we have everything right. And then when they serve you the food, it's terrible. It's Twizzlers and grilled cheese in a fancy restaurant. And this is what we have become as a whole. Not everybody, but as a whole. This is the only industry that I have ever seen this being able to exist like this. And it's madness. And it's unfortunate.
How do you think we got here? How do you think we got here?
I think we got here because when you and I came up, and Mr. Sells, an instructor's quality was judged, and his strength and his value was judged on a product that he or she produced. We found a way to make money. We found a way to make 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, $90,000. And in the process of doing that, we had to make it more accepted for everybody. We lowered our standards. We raised our prices, and and then what happened is we took, and I'm not saying you have to be a competitor. We stopped competing because that was hard, right? I didn't want to make a quality student right now. When I could just have a plain guy who can speak well, who knows a little bit about martial arts, he can teach from the teleprompter, and I found a way to make that tool. And then to justify it, I added life skills in it. And I think the life skills are real, but that was the seal in it. That was I got you. And we started catering to mothers, and that's what happened, in my opinion. And we got away from it because generally fathers are the type of people, we're like, I want my son to be able to throw some hands for real. And mothers, I just want them to listen. I just want them to behave. And I want them to, little Johnny, to stand up straight. And that's what was the majority in our school, women. And we catered to that. And I think I think that is an important component. But I think, again, we have become glorified self-esteem centers, and we have gotten away from that. And this is why you have a crowd that goes to MMA now, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, combat sports. When we used to be in that equation, we're not even looked at as that anymore. And that's unfortunate. We're not even considered in combat sports. Taekwondo, I know some guys that do Taekwondo that was amazing, mean, vicious. We're not even looked at anymore. Well, we don't even recommend each other to each other's schools. If my child is going, I'm sending them to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school. I'm not even thinking about a karate school. I would have to personally know that person. Well, I wouldn't have to know him if he did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm assuming that you're going to go there because what's the culture in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? The culture in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is don't tell me, show me. Karate guys, we get away with theory or the bunkai. The kata means this. That's all you got to know. And you certify. Madness.
I think that is an excellent place as the last word there. Probably offended a couple people in the last 30 seconds, so that was good.
You can only offend people that are in that situation. If they see it for what it is, but he says it from love, I think like they get better.
Of course. All right, well, Mr. Tention, thank you so much for joining. This was
Thank
totally
you.
awesome. Mr. Sells,
I got to hang out. I'm sorry, Mr. Sells, I got to hang out with you. I got to hang out with you. All right.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to hang out with anybody, but
amazing. All right, guys, thank you so much. See everybody.
Thank you guys for having me, guys.
Amazing.
All right, have a great one.